Sudesi, Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, Namaskar Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sayadeva Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhakti-Vrinda ki jai, Shri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadaptam ki jai, Gauri Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to seven devotees, all glories to seven devotees, all glories to seven devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Guru, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutade Shimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschachadesha Tadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti-Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Verse 6, Evam Svachitte Svata Eva Siddha Atma Priyorto Bhagavan Ananta. Evam, thus, Svachitte, in one's own heart, Svata, by his omnipotency, Eva, certainly, Siddha, fully represented, Atma, super soul, Priya, very dear, Artha, substance, Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ananta, eternal, unlimited, Tam, unto him, Nirvritta, being detached from the world, Niyata, permanent, Artha, supreme gain, Bhajeta, one must worship, Samsara Hetu, the cause of the conditioned state of existence, Uparama, cessation, Cha, certainly, Yatra, in which. Translation, thus being fixed, one must render service unto the Supersoul situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency, because he is the Almighty Personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited. He is the ultimate goal of life, and by worshiping him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. Purport, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1861, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the all-pervading, omnipresent Supersoul. Therefore, one who is a yogi can worship only him, because he is a substance and not illusion. Every living creature is engaging in the service of something else. A living being's constitutional position is to render service, but in the atmosphere of Maya or illusion, or the conditional state of existence, the conditioned soul seeks the service of illusion. A conditioned soul works in the service of its temporary body, bodily relatives like wife and children, and necessary paraphernalia for maintaining the body and bodily relations, such as the house, land, wealth, society, and country. But he does not know that all such renderings of service are totally illusory. As we have discussed many times before, this material world is itself an illusion, like a mirage in the desert. In the desert there is an illusion of water, and the foolish animals become entrapped by such an illusion and run after water in the desert, although there is no water at all. But because there is no water in the desert, one does not conclude that there's no water at all. The intelligent person knows well that there is certainly water in the seas and oceans, but such vast reservoirs of water are far, far away from the desert. One should therefore search for water in the vicinity of seas and oceans and not in the desert. Every one of us is searching after real happiness in life, namely eternal life, eternal or unlimited knowledge, and unending blissful life. But foolish people who have no knowledge of the substance search after the reality of life in the illusion. This material body does not endure eternally, and everything in relation with its temporary body, such as wife, children, society, and country, also changes along with the change of body. This is called samsara, or repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. We would like to find a solution for all these problems of life, but we do not know the way. Herein is suggested that anyone who wants to make an end to these miseries of life, namely repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age, must take to this process of worshiping the Supreme Lord and not others, as it is also ultimately suggested in Bhagavad Gita. If we at all want to end the cause of our conditional life, we must take to the worship of Lord Sri Krishna, who is present in everyone's heart by his natural affection for all living beings, who are actually the parts and parcels of the Lord. The baby in the lap of his mother is naturally attached to the mother, and the mother is attached to the child. But when the child grows up and becomes overwhelmed by circumstances, he gradually becomes detached from the mother, although the mother always expects some sort of service from the grown-up child and is equally affectionate towards her child, even though the child is forgetful. Similarly, because we are all part and parcel of the Lord is always affectionate to us, and he always tries to get us back home, back to Godhead. But we, the conditioned souls, do not care for him and run instead after the illusory bodily connections. We must therefore extricate ourselves from all illusory connections of the world and seek reunion with the Lord, trying to render service unto him because he is the ultimate truth. Actually, we are hankering after him as the child seeks the mother. And to search out the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we need not go anywhere else, because the Lord is within our hearts. This does not suggest, however, that we should not go to the places of worship, namely the temples, churches, and mosques. Such holy places of worship are also occupied by the Lord, because the Lord is omnipresent. For the common man, these holy places are centers of learning about the science of God. When the temples are devoid of activities, the people in general become uninterested in such places, and consequently the mass of people gradually become godless, and a godless civilization is the result. Such a hellish civilization artificially increases the conditions of life, and existence becomes intolerable for everyone. The foolish leaders of a godless civilization try to devise various plans to bring about peace and prosperity in the godless world under a patent trademark of materialism, and because such attempts are illusory, only the people elect incompetent, blind leaders, one after another, who are incapable of offering solutions. If we want at all to end this anomaly of a godless civilization, we must follow the principles of revealed scriptures like the Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the instructions of a person like Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who has no attraction for material gain. Translation: thus being fixed, one must render service unto the super soul situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency, because he is the almighty personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited. He is the ultimate goal of life, and worshiping him, one can end the cause of the conditional state of existence. This is a very positive statement, but people may perhaps misunderstand this because of the language used. Here we use language which can be, which devotees understand, but someone who doesn't understand the vocabulary may have difficulty grasping what this statement means. In the purport, Prabhupada describes about the illusory nature of this world, which we call Maya. So probably Maya is not so commonly used in the English language. Yoga is now a common term, but Maya is not so well known. But it's very well used in the Vedic literature. And Maya, of course, literally means illusion or bewilderment, or literally Ma means not. So Maya means that which actually does not exist. Something which is false. And this refers to everything in this material world. But we can of course object to that and say, well, this isn't false, 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 it's real. So yes, we do accept that matter does exist, and the elements exist, the universe exists, the planets exist, the bodies exist. But they do not exist as we think they exist. This is the what it is. So when we look at objects, we have a certain conception of what this object is. It's not actually that. It's something else. So when we see everything in this world, every single living entity is looking at it from his particular point of view. That is, we are looking at every object in this world in terms of our own survival and our own enjoyment. That's the illusion. Because actually it's got nothing to do with our enjoyment, it's got nothing to do with our survival. But we're thinking of those objects as good or bad according to how they support me or they put me in danger. So that's the illusion. So nothing is good, nothing is bad, nothing is wonderful, etc. But we project this idea upon all the objects around us. So we think of them in terms of good and bad. So this is the illusion. The objects are not unreal, but our conception of things is all unreal. So, obviously, if we live in an unreal world with all these false concepts, it would be difficult to achieve real happiness. But we can achieve a false happiness, a Maya happiness. This is also possible. And this is the arrangement in the material world. So Maya not only means illusion, it also means the illusion of happiness that we get from this world. It actually isn't happiness, but we think it's happiness. So this is even a bigger illusion. This is simply not just the illusion, but the illusion of happiness in this world. That's a bigger illusion. So this is the illusion that all living entities are striving for. Happiness, as Prabhupada points out in the purport. Everybody wants to be happy. They want to escape birth, death, old age, and disease. Nobody wants temporariness. Nobody likes discomfort or pain. So we want, and this is represented by death, by old age, and by disease. So all of these things are problems for us, and nobody wants them. So we try to get happiness. We prevent these things. So we get longer lifespan, no disease, etc. Of course, all of this is illusion again. We're trying to be happy by getting these things like a long life and health, etc. So this is another type of Maya. Okay? But nevertheless, all living entities in this world are striving for this. So the plants are trying to live and be happy and grow. The animals are trying to be happy and grow. And the human beings are trying this also. And it's all Maya, all illusion. All useless because it's a useless endeavor. It's not real. So this concept of useless world made up of temporary things is not uncommon. It's not only in the Vedic literature. We'll find this represented in Buddhism as well. Buddha says everything is, temporary like this. Even in Christianity, you find the same thing. The world is useless. And you have to give everything up if you want to attain the kingdom of God. So it's not an uncommon idea. However, in the modern world, this is rather, we could say, something which people find peculiar or very old-fashioned. Why are you so rigid and old-fashioned like people were 100 years ago or 200 years ago? It's better we enjoy in the material world. Why do we have to give everything up? But we'll see this tendency in all religions. There's a tendency to renounce things. So, in the Vedic literature, this is a little bit more precise and a little bit more emphasized, and therefore, as in the previous verse, we get this whole verse about renouncing everything and giving up your clothing and your food and the water and the house and everything, running off to the forest. So that's the extreme renunciation that is there in the Vedic literature also. So we have a system of yoga and renunciation, austerities and vows, etc., which are practiced in the Vedic scriptures. So that's an extreme level. But in any case, you'll find in general there is this tendency to condemn the material world. And in the modern world, we'll find that very pessimistic and unrealistic, etc. And we'd rather simply not think about that and enjoy. But as I say, Vedic literature, this is all Maya. Why do you continue to seek out this type of pleasure in the material world? We should understand, of course, that this idea of being happy in the material world, etc., is not new. We have ancient philosophies in India also prescribing this. So we have Charvaka Muni's Lokayat philosophy, which is very hedonistic. The only purpose of life ultimately is to enjoy. So enjoy as much as you can. That's his philosophy. And he had a whole following of people behind him. This was a few thousand years ago. So along with this very strict Vedic principle of Maya and renouncing the world, we have the opposite there also. A group of people say, no, we want to enjoy this material world. There's nothing new that we have in the material world. We may think it's unique in the modern world, but it isn't. It's been going on since time immemorial. But we'll find that philosophy, though it was current for some time, it eventually died out. And we have the more conventional philosophies overtaking that, and the idea of you do have to control your senses, you do have to renounce to some degree. That has become the standard in the Vedic literature. As I mentioned previously, the Vedas are also realistic, so they don't expect everybody to follow this principle of running off to a cave and living with bark clothing and all this. Though that is there, they will find it represented in the Vanaprastha later on, I think in chapter 3 and in Canto 11 of Bhagavatam and Canto 3 of Bhagavatam. There's a whole section on the Varnashram system, and the Vanaprasthas going off to the forest and wearing bark clothing and living off the roots, digging up roots in the forest and eating that. And that's not even sannyas, that's just the Varnaprastha ashram. So the very strict rules are there also. But in general, not such an emphasis on such strict renunciation, and rather some sort of, we could say, compromise in which we can live in this world but restrict our senses to some degree. So the lowest stage of that is called karma yoga, which is a term familiar among some people who practice yoga now. They refer to karma yoga. So this is actually the lowest stage in which we don't completely renounce everything. We maintain our body, etc. But we do have a spiritual goal within our activities of this world. So that's the first stage. And in the Vedic system, this means that we live in this world with our family, and we have a job, but at the same time, we restrict our activities to some degree. So we have some principles which we call dharma, rules and regulations. So certain activities are permitted, certain activities are forbidden. And we follow these rules.
It's also practical because according to different types of people have different rules. So some people have more rules to follow because they're more capable. Other people can't follow those rules, so they're given more lax rules to follow. So this way we get a whole system of rules for different types of people as well, which is more practical than having one standard for everybody. You have different standards for different types of people. So this is what we call the varnas, different classes. So each class, the Sudra, the Vaishya, the Kshatriya, and the Brahmana, they have different rules to follow according to the qualification. And at the top we have the Brahmanas, who have the most rules to follow because they're the most qualified. So they have to be more in control of their senses, more rules to follow. Those who are Sudras, not very capable, less rules to follow. So in this way there is some restriction on the human being. And this way, gradually, people, if they're at a lower level, over many lifetimes, they can advance to a higher level and a higher level and a higher level. The whole purpose of this is to, controlling the senses and limiting in some way or other, is to eventually get you to the level where you can start spiritual life. That's all. The whole system is there to take you to spiritual life eventually. And that is represented in this verse by the fact that here it says that you should render service to the Supreme Lord, who is Atma, who is Priya, who is Ananta, who is Siddha. So he is the complete person. He is Atma, that is the supreme soul of everything and everybody. He is Priya, he is the dearest, the most attractive person of all. He is Ananta, he is no beginning and no end. And he is Bhagavan, he is full of all wonderful qualities. So you should, in your heart, you should worship this person. So that is the goal of all of these restrictions and renunciation, etc. So renunciation is not complete in itself. It is complemented by this goal of developing an attraction to this Supreme Lord and worshiping Him. So these descriptive elements here, how the Lord is described, are reasons why we should serve the Lord. So Prabhupada in the purport mentions that everybody serves something or somebody. In the modern world, probably it's not a very good term to use. We don't want to serve anybody. Why should we serve somebody? We're subject to somebody else's will, so everybody's suspicious that somebody's going to exploit them. And God Himself is He's another exploiter. So everyone has a mistrust of being the servant of somebody else. But this idea of serving and worshiping is inherent in spiritual life, and we cannot escape it. And it's inherent in the material world, and we cannot escape it. It's only a matter of who you worship and the results you get. So in the material world, as Prabhupada mentions, you cannot escape service. Even if you don't like to be under somebody else, you are still serving. So if you work, you're working under the boss. So you're serving him. And some people have to work very hard. They have to work, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, or whatever. That's very, very strict service, very heavy service they have to do. Of course, they can defend that and say, well, I get some money. With the money I can enjoy it. Nevertheless, they're forced to serve. So in the material world, yes, in order to eat, in order to survive, in order to maintain your family, you're forced to serve. You have to do that anyway. But of course it's forced, and maybe that's the reason why people don't want to be served, because it's a forced type of thing. Of course, now even if you don't have to work, you got enough money and you don't have to work, you can say, well, I'm free, I don't want to serve anybody. Even then, you are serving somebody. Eventually, you're under somebody else's control. So if a man is attracted to a woman, then he falls under her control, whatever. Or a woman is attracted to a man, falls under his control. Whatever. So we're ultimately under the control of our senses and our mind. We serve our senses and our mind in this world. I have the desire for this, and then we go after that. So even if we're not serving another person, we're getting controlled by our desires and our mind. So Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter itself warns us that don't fall into this trap of becoming the servant of your mind and your senses. If you do, then you're a failure. Because your mind and senses are going to tell you to enjoy as much as you can. And when you do that, then you end up not being a human being anymore. You eventually end up as an animal or a plant. So you degrade yourself if you let the mind and senses control. So we're serving something in this material world. We may think we're independent, but actually we're not. We're at the whim of our desires and our senses. So that's the material world, and this is all related to this Maya, being under the control of our senses and our desires, etc., is simply under control of the illusion. The mind creates desires, and we think this is very nice, and I can enjoy like this. So that's an illusion. It's not real. The objects are completely inert. They have no good qualities in them at all. Nevertheless, we find wonderful qualities in certain objects and certain persons, etc. So it's all Maya, illusion. So we're ultimately all under control of illusion, Maya. We're the servant of Maya in this world, even if we don't like to. We are the servant of Maya, ultimately. So, not good. We end up in a disaster under control of Maya. We just create more illusion, which continues birth after birth after birth after birth in an endless cycle of birth and death, which we call samsara, or the wheel of birth and death. So the other thing is to change this. What do? Instead of serving Maya in all sorts of different forms, including our desires, we serve Supreme Lord, this Bhagavan here, or the Atma. And by doing so, we destroy samsara, which is in the last line, samsara hetu uparamas. The causes of samsara are destroyed by altering our form of worship. Instead of serving Maya and samsara, we serve Supreme Lord, and we destroy our connection with the material world. We destroy Maya by that. So Maya is difficult to overcome. Very, very difficult to overcome, because it's a very well constructed prison house. With lots of illusions in it. So you can never, you may think you're free, but you're not free. You get another trap, and you're in another cage or another prison, one after the other. So it's very difficult to get out of that prison, because it's very subtle. It's not gross, even like a gross prison. Very, very subtle. But by that one simple act of serving the Lord instead of Maya, we get out. And it's not a long process. It doesn't take many, many births. It may take a few births, but not infinite number of births in the past. Maybe a few births, but we can get out of this prison house of the material world, that Maya, by worship of the Lord. So instead of serving Maya, we serve the Lord. So maybe we don't want to serve anybody because we're suspicious that they exploit us. But as I said, we're serving something anyway in this material world. So better we serve the Lord. What's the difference in this service? Of course, one, the object is completely different. The object is not Maya, it's not illusory, it's real. And the object is perfect. Siddha. It's a perfect object, independent of this material world, full of all wonderful qualities. That's the meaning of Bhagavan. Bhagavan means possessor of, Bhaga, which means auspicious qualities. So the Lord is full of all wonderful qualities and no bad quality, no fault at all. And it's all non-material, not subject to birth and death. The Lord is Ananta, no end to the Lord and his wonderful qualities, which have no fault in them at all. Of course, for us, of course, that's a perfect object. But it's not just an object. He is a conscious being. So it's not that we're attracted to some object to enjoy. This is a conscious being. That is what the Atma means here. The Atma means he pervades with his consciousness. So we pervade our bodies, so we're called Atma. But the Lord pervades not just his body, he pervades every body. In the material world and the spiritual world, he pervades everything, matter and spirit. So this is the supreme Atma, or the Paramatma. So he's a conscious being, not made out of matter at all. He has a form, but it's not a material form with a temporary body. Eternal spiritual form. And so he's conscious, conscious being who pervades everywhere and knows everything. Not only that, he is also Priya. So Priya means very dear or very affectionate. So we can establish an affectionate relationship with the Lord, and he will respond to that. This is what the Lord is, Priya. So in other words, the Supreme Lord is the perfect object of love. And love is the ultimate goal of the jiva. We have to serve, but that service is not like the service of the material world where you get exploited by somebody else. The Lord doesn't have to exploit anybody. He has everything already. So he's only affectionate. So though we do serve the Lord, we have complete trust, because the Lord doesn't need anything from us. He doesn't have to take anything from us, but he can give everything to us. So this is the perfect object of love, the person who can respond perfectly to each individual and satisfy each individual. So this is the Priya nature of the Lord, very, very dear. So we establish a relationship of love with the Supreme Lord. And when we practice that, that's called Bhakti Yoga. Establishing a loving relationship, an affectionate relationship with that supreme, wonderful entity full of all wonderful qualities. So in other words, we're cultivating a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. So that we may call it service, and we don't like that word because it means subjugation or exploitation. No, service here means we're establishing a relation, an affectionate relationship. So in this relationship, of course, the Lord is supreme, and we are small entities, particles. But the Lord is so merciful that the more you advance, the greater you become, and the lesser the Lord becomes. So that though we're naturally the servant of the Lord, eventually the Lord is the servant of the devotee. So in prema, the Lord serves the devotee. That's the position. So therefore there's no subjugation, exploitation at all. The Lord is the servant of the devotee, even though we're eternally the servant of the Lord. He becomes the servant of the devotee. So in other words, the Lord is most magnanimous, most generous of all, and therefore the worthy object of love. So why should we worship the Lord? We should worship the Lord simply because he's the most perfect person, a perfect object of love. And by doing so, we establish a wonderful relationship of love that is bliss. Then, in that case, we get our happiness, which is eternal. So this is the solution to this Maya, which is explained by Srimad Prabhupada, the purport and how that Maya makes everybody a fool in this world. He gives the example of the illusion, the mirage. Sometimes if you're driving down the road on a hot day, you'll see on the road there's this, looks like water coming off the road, but there's no water there. Or if you're in the desert, then you see the palm trees and the oasis over there. And the example is the deer, the foolish animal, sees that and he runs after the water. He keeps running and running, but there's no water there. So eventually he dies because of that. So this is the illusion in the desert, the mirage in the desert, an illusion of water. And we're trying to get it. So that's an example of this material world. We're thinking this is going to make me happy. And we run after something in the material world, and we spend all of our life trying to get these things and getting our happiness. Ultimately, we don't get it. It's like the animal fooled by the mirage of the desert. That's the illusion of Maya. So in this way, the material world is presented in a very hopeless way. It's not a very good place to live in at all. So the other example Prabhupada gives here is the baby in the lap of the mother. So the child is naturally attracted to the mother is naturally attracted to the child. But then when the child grows up, the child leaves the house and maybe forgets the mother and runs off and goes and works and enjoys on his own and doesn't come back or whatever. And the mother never leaves the child, and she's always thinking of his welfare and whatever like that. The example I think is in the Bible, the prodigal son. The son went out and he left and he was enjoying like anything and forgetting the house. Then eventually he fell into misery. He came back finally. And all the other sons were saying, "Ugh, we don't want this person in the house. He's so ungrateful. He left enjoying on his own. Why he should come back?" But then the father, he embraced him. And everybody was shocked. Why is the father embracing that son? So the answer is that the Supreme Lord is like that all the people in the material world are forgetting the Lord like the forgetful sons and daughters or whatever. But if they recognize the Lord welcomes them and doesn't remember any of their bad activities or anything like that. So the Lord is willing to welcome the living entities, even though they completely ignore him in this material world. So if they make attempts to do bhakti, then the Lord is very, very eager to accept them, and he encourages those devotees and helps them on the path. This makes the path of bhakti very easy compared to other spiritual processes. We get the mercy of the Lord, and that he helps us advance. Okay, any question there?
It's regarding devotional service that sometimes it's very easily understood by me that bhakti refers to service, but sometimes when it comes to yoga, for example, this verse talks about the yogi meditating on his puso. So it looks weird for me to think that the yogi is doing a service to the Supreme.
Oh, okay. Well, in one sense, there's two types of service defined. One is active service, which we do in sadhana bhakti, that is engage our eye, engage our ear, etc., like that, and do different things, hands and feet and whatever. Some of which are very active services like cooking or cleaning or worshiping or like that. But kirtan is also a service. We don't usually think of it as a service. We're using our voice, so we're glorifying the Lord. So we're using our voice to glorify the Lord. That's a type of service. So glorification is another type of service because it's we're trying to please the Lord by that. Just as you go to a person that you have affection for, you glorify them. So then we consider that a service also. Or simply looking at the Lord is also considered a service because we're admiring the wonderful form of Krishna. So that's considered to be a type of service also. So it may not look like service in the very physical sense, but it's also part of bhakti. Then we have another type of bhakti apart from that, not engaging the senses and the mind. Even meditation is considered to be a type of service, because simply thinking of the person favorably is a type of, gives the Lord pleasure also, so it's a type of service. But then we have something else which is not even the thinking or not using the senses at all. It's more or less the emotion of simply loving the Lord. It's called Bhava Rupa Bhakti. So that's also part of Bhakti. So we don't technically call it service, but we have the active service, Cheshta Rupa Bhakti, and we have the Bhava Rupa Bhakti, the feeling for the Lord. It's all considered part of Bhakti. And then within the Cheshta Rupa, we got the things that are more active and the ones that are like less active, which don't look like, menial service or things like that. So that when you call devotional service, it includes a lot of things, not just the active things, but other things as well. So even meditation is considered to be service to the Lord. It's one of the angas of even sadhana bhakti, to engage the mind. That's how we engage the mind.
The only question that comes to me is how God is self-satisfied, right? Anara. So how do you serve someone who is totally self-satisfied, who doesn't need to serve?
Yes, so God has two features, or I can say multi-features, but he has contrary features. So he is Atmarama. By nature, the God does not depend on anybody else. He doesn't need to, get some enjoyment for his senses, or he's self-contained. He's completely happy. If nothing is there, fine. He's overjoyed in himself. So that's one nature of the God. That's the Atmarama, satisfied in the self. But the other nature is that he's completely attracted to the devotee. He's under the control of the devotee. He's completely non-independent. He's completely dependent. If a devotee has prema, the Lord is under his control. He's completely attracted to him. That's the sixth quality of bhakti, Krishna Karshani. Prema attracts Krishna. Krishna is most attractive. He's all attractive. Everybody's attracted to him. But then Krishna is attracted to the person who has prema. So this is a contrary quality in the Lord. He's independent, but he's dependent. He is Atmarama, but he is full of this, enjoyment through bhakti with his devotees. He's Atmarama, but he's out there enjoying the Rasa Leela with the gopis, billions of gopis. So he's both things. So we cannot confine the Lord by limiting him with one set of qualities, because he's often the opposite as well.
So would you say that in sadhana bhakti we're just serving ourselves really, and the service to God start with prem or bhava. But in sadhana bhakti, when we do things to make progress, then we just do it for ourselves. Really.
Well, there is an element for ourselves in the sense where we're trying to advance in our bhakti, but then the bhakti, the nature of bhakti itself is to anya abhilashita shunya, no other desire than the desire to serve the Lord. Or to please the Lord. So basically, if we're saying we want to advance in bhakti, it's not for ourselves, it's so we can please the Lord more. So in that sense, it's not for the self.
Maharaj mentions in the purport that the Lord is always affectionate to us, always tries to get us back home, back to Godhead, but the jiva's conditioned soul, he doesn't want to go back. Or he doesn't think he wants to go back. So what's a practical example how, and at the same time, Krishna doesn't interfere with our free will.
Yeah.
So what's a practical example how we can understand Krishna is arranging us to go back despite our desire?
Well, a nice example is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's Gopal Kumar. In one lifetime, then he met the Guru gave him a mantra. He started chanting the mantra, and then he started developing bhakti and everything. And eventually he ended up in Vaikuntha, and then he saw Vishnu. And then Vishnu explained, actually, for many lifetimes I've been looking at you, and I've kept praying that sooner or later you would come to me. But you didn't. I was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and you didn't come. And so finally I came down as the Guru, and I gave you the mantra, and then you started. So now that you come here, which is also another few days of Brahma later, I'm very, very happy that you finally come here. So somehow he made an arrangement. The Lord came as the Guru, or we could say through the devotee, the Lord gives a little influence that way, and they begin their devotional service. But it may take many lifetimes to get to that point. In general, we say that you can only start if you have faith. But then faith itself is produced by this accidental bhakti, so to speak, that we take prasadam, or we hear kirtan, or somehow get the mercy of devotees, but we're not looking for it. And that prepares the field, and we start developing faith. Based on that, we can practice bhakti. So again, it's mercy. And we can't predict when the devotee is going to show that mercy to anybody.
So, Maharaj, in this verse,
Jiva Goswami explains that the last one is like a secondary result of this practice.
Or the destruction of samsara. Yeah.
The first one is indicating the primary result.
Yeah. That we worship the Lord, we develop service to the Lord. And the result of that is, obviously, we get out of the material world.
But it seems like the first line is indicating, it says, Swachiti Swat Eva Siddha, it becomes fully manifest in the heart.
Yeah.
Is that what it's explaining?
Siddha?
How it becomes fully manifest in the heart.
So, what's the question?
I'm saying, is that indicating that this is the primary result of the practice of bhakti, is how it becomes fully present, or wherever fully it is present in the heart?
Well, because for us, of course, he's always fully manifested in the spiritual world, but for us, he becomes manifested when we get to prema, and we develop rasa for the Lord, and we can appreciate his qualities to a larger degree, or most of it, to a high degree. So in that sense, that's the result. We get to prema, in other words. So that's the goal of sadhana bhakti, to get to prema. By which then all the samsara is automatically gone, but the ultimate result of the prema is bliss, ananda. Okay. Hare Krishna.
how long is